The whole galaxy has an earthquake, and when it's done, there's suddenly a crazy space hobo screaming that he has to kill a monster. This monster, he says, is what's causing these galaxy quakes, and if he doesn't stop him, he could destroy the universe. What's more, the more that Kirk, Spock, and the gang look into it, the more it appears that he could be right. The crew's gonna have to learn to think interdimensionally if they're going to be able to handle the alternative factor. Hit it!
Hey!
Two major guest stars this week. In the role of Lieutenant Charlene Masters is Janet McLaughlin. She had guest spots in sci-fi adjacent shows like The Girl from U.N.C.L.E., The $6 Million Man, and Wonder Woman. Plus a ton of other stuff. You name it, she probably guest starred in it. From Barney Miller to ER to Punky Brewster to Moonlighting. This lady was everywhere. Playing Lazarus, and also playing Lazarus, is Robert Brown. Not a lot of science fiction roles, but he did the guest star thing on lots of old school favorites like Wagon Train, Bonanza, Columbo, and Fantasy Island. Some crazy stuff surrounding the casting of this guy, but we'll get into that later on. For now, let's get into the plot. So, the Enterprise is minding its own business one day, just enterprising around, charting a new planet, and all of a sudden the ship is rocked by a piece of astrophotography. Twice. Kirk asks what gives, and Spock says that them 2 times what rocked the ship so much were moments when everything in range of their senses just winked out for a split second. Non-existence, he says. As he's doing more scans, he picks up a dude on the planet that wasn't there before. Spock can't explain it, but when Kirk asks if this dude could pose a danger to the ship, Spock says, well, I know absolutely squat about this guy. I've only known of his existence about 11 seconds longer than you have, but yeah, sure, why not? So Kirk decides to assemble a team and go check it out. So Kirk, Spock, and 4 red shirts beam down to Vasquez Rocks and start looking for this week's guest star. Right around where Kirk found the potassium nitrate last week, the team spots a ship that's on loan from the Jetsons. Looks like it might be crashed or something. As they're checking it out, some kind of space hobo shows up and seems really happy to see everybody. Says something about needing to, quote, stop him, whoever him is, and hoping that there's still time. Then he falls off of a rock. The boys run over there and find that he's alive, unconscious, and appears to have a tribble with mange taped to his face. Back up on the ship, Kirk checks in on the bridge, and one Lieutenant Masters reports that the disturbances have almost completely drained the dilithium crystals. Kirk points out in an as you know that without the crystals, their orbit will decay in 10 hours, and he orders her to get them charged back up. Just then, Uhura says she's got a message from Starfleet that is, quote, Code Factor 1. Another as you know from Kirk tells us that this means that they're under an invasion alert. He brings the ship to red alert. Call comes in from Commodore No Name Given, who says the disturbance was felt all across the galaxy and far beyond, he says. Screwed up all kinds of stuff, and the epicenter is the planet the Enterprise is currently orbiting. Dumb luck, right? He wants to know if these disturbances are artificial, and if so, what are they for? Kirk says he thinks it's a prelude to invasion. Kind of a weird conclusion to jump to, but Commodore Whatsit says he agrees, so what do I know? He wants Kirk to investigate and figure out what to do. He's also evacuating all Starfleet ships and personnel from the area, so the Enterprise is on their own. Don't screw up, okay? Bye. Kirk goes to talk to the space hobo, and we learn that his name is Lazarus. He says he's chasing the evilest guy who ever eviled. Also, the tribble on his face has become even more, well, let's call it improbable. He says the thing he's chasing destroyed his whole civilization, so he's understandably honked off. When Kirk mentions the disturbances, it sets Laz off, says the thing is anti-life, and wants Kirk to join his holy quest. Uh-oh. Kirk says he needs to check out Laz's story, so he's going to beam down to the planet and take Frizzly Adams over here with him. Kirk and Laz meet up with Spock and some red shirts while they're taking a look at Laz's Jetsons ship. Spock says he ain't found nothing and asks what Kirk's been able to get out of Stinky Pete over there. Kirk says Laz claims there's a creature down there. Spock says the ship's sensors show no living creature on the planet and respectfully suggests that Laz is a lying bag of butts. In a close-up of Laz, we see that the Tribble has grown some of its hair back. Also, he wants to know why Kirk believes the Vulcan science officer he served with for years, who has a proven track record of being right, over him with the halitosis and the face tribble and the whatnot. Kirk asks Laz to cut the crap, and suddenly another disturbance happens, and Laz runs off in full Renaissance fair mode, talking about have at thee and all this. And we cut to a blue scene with a bluer Laz who gets jumped by another blue guy, and so now we got blue guy fighting blue guy in Blue Land for like a full minute and a half. Cut back to Vasquez Rocks, and we see Laz stumble around a bit and then fall off of another rock. Kirk runs to help. Says, we need to get back to the ship, and Laz jacks his psycho rating to 11. Back up on the ship, Laz is in sickbay, and McCoy is treating Laz for a head wound and the face tribble with some Rogaine because it looks like it's shed its winter coat or something. On the bridge, Kirk and Spock discuss that Laz's story seems far-fetched in blaming one dude for all this stuff, but they have to admit that he does look like he got his butt kicked by something. McCoy calls Kirk down to sickbay and tells him that after he treated Laz's head wound, he walked out of the room, and when he came back, the head wound was totally gone. Weird, right? Also, apparently, Laz is just roaming the ship now. Great. Well, we find a Laz looking freshly showered with no wound on his head in the rec room, enjoying a coffee. That's nice. Lieutenant Who Gives a Rat's Ass comes in and talks to Lieutenant Masters about the dilithium crystals. Clean Laz overhears this and perks up a bit. Laz leaves to follow them, but has an episode in the corridor. We get another two blue dudes fighting sequence, and then when we come out of it, Laz has the head wound again. Kirk and McCoy find him like this, and Kirk thinks McCoy was joking about Laz's head wound being gone, because that's something McCoy is always joking about, am I right? Spock calls Kirk and Laz to the bridge to show them that he's found a source of radiation on the planet that wasn't there before. Spock can't explain it, but says it looks to be some kind of a rip in the space-time continuum. And he wasn't even able to localize it until he tied in the dilithium crystals with the sensors. Laz hears the dilithium crystals mentioned, and while his face tribble sheds some more fur, he explains that they can use the crystals to trap the creature he wants to kill so badly. Laz demands the crystals. Kirk says no. Laz turns into a jerk and storms off the bridge. He steps out onto deck, whatever, and has another episode. Blue guys, yada yada, and just like that, no head wound Laz is back. He finds a door marked engineering, and inside we see Lieutenant Masters working the dilithium charging station. Lieutenant No Name from before comes in and tells Masters that Kirk wants to talk to her. While Kirk's telling her to rig up the crystals for an experiment, Laz is knocking out Lieutenant Dayplayer with some kind of knockout gas. Then he knocks Masters out too, while she's talking to the captain, so Kirk knows something's up. On the bridge, Uhura tells Kirk that security reports that Laz is missing. From where, I don't know. After the commercial break, we see head wound Laz in the conference room, and Kirk's log entry tells us that 2 dilithium crystals are missing. Also, Laz's face tribble is almost completely bald now. He says it wasn't him that took the crystals, it was the creature. Kirk decides to take Spock, some red shirts, and Laz down to check out the radiation source and see if they can find this creature and or the crystals. Laz's face tribble now has a full head of well-conditioned hair with lots of shine and bounce. The team is surrounding the Jetsons ship, but no crystals. And Spock now says that the source of radiation has disappeared. The team splits up and looks around for something. Laz has another episode, and if you thought they were going to have him fall off of a rock for a third friggin' time, yeah, that's totally what they do. Back up on the ship, Laz is in sickbay again. Kirk says they researched Laz's story about his planet that the creature supposedly destroyed, and it's horse shit. There ain't no planet where he said it was, and there never has been. Laz says, alright, I fudged a little. He's actually from Vasquez Rocks, the planet they're orbiting right now. Also, his ship ain't just a spaceship, it's a time ship too. Also, the creature's a time traveler as well. He goes a little cuckoo and asks for some dilithium crystals to kill the creature, but they get him calmed down. McCoy assures Kirk he's not going anywhere this time, and they both leave the room. Laz has yet another episode, but seems to fend it off. In the conference room, Kirk and Spock are spitballing, trying to figure out what's going on. So are the rest of us. Spock says it's possible there's an alternate universe situation happening, that they've been dealing with two different Lazes all this time. One with the head wound, one without. One crazy balls, one fairly sane. Both, however, sporting diseased tribbles on their faces. Some things transcend alternate dimensions, you know? But they say that other universe is an antimatter universe. So if the two Lazes ever meet in real space, boom. Cut to Lazarus, who has apparently just waltzed out of sickbay yet again and is wandering around the ship. He spots a high voltage panel and rewires some stuff and causes a fire in that room with the dilithium crystals. Masters and No Name evacuate and sound the alarm, and Laz walks right in and snatches some crystals. He runs into the transporter room where Seymour Krellborn is apparently working his shift. He knocks him out and beams down to Vasquez Rocks. Kirk figures out his plan and beams down to follow him. Spock is going to assemble a security team and will beam down when he can. Laz has put the crystals in his ship when Kirk shows up. Laz is upset about that, and when Kirk leans into his ship to slap that mangy tribble off his face, Kirk suddenly teleports away. This really sets Laz off. Remember that blue room with the blue guys? Well, Kirk is now blue and in the blue room, but there's only him this time. He wanders around lost for a bit and then falls over and ends up on what looks like it might be Vasquez Rocks, but is actually a soundstage for reasons we'll talk about later. The Jetson ship is there, and so is non-head wound Laz. This Laz confirms his and Spock's theory about the parallel universe and the fact that if the two Lazes meet, it will blow up both universes. He also says that the blue room is an alternative warp, an interdimensional corridor that keeps eternity from blowing up. No kidding, that's what he actually says. They hatch a plan to force Crazy Laz into the corridor while regular Laz is in there, and then he can keep him there while Kirk blows up Laz's ship. Downside is, it'll trap both Lazes in the corridor forever. But the upside is, the universe don't blow up. You takes the good, you takes the bad, right? Kirk shows up back in the Prime universe and sneaks up on Laz. With Spock and some red shirts just standing around watching, Kirk wrestles Laz into the zappy thing and sends him into the corridor. Back up on the ship, Kirk orders Leslie to fire on Laz's ship and it gets vaporized. Kirk and Spock relax in a universe that is now safe from having its eternity blown up, whatever that means. But Kirk expresses dismay at the fate of Lazarus. Slow pull out, and we roll credits. Great stuff. Well, there are a couple of good lines, I guess. Let's start there.
I suggest, Captain, that you've been lied to.
Captain, you yourself said there were no other explanations. Why do you give credence to this man?
I fail to comprehend your indignation, sir. I've simply made the logical deduction that you are a liar.
Spock has been direct and blunt before, but he really outdoes himself with this one. I like how, to Spock, as long as the conclusion is arrived at logically, there's no cause to get offended at it. I mean, he's not wrong, I guess, but it's still entertaining when somebody gets Spock slapped.
So you're the terrible thing, the murdering monster, the creature.
Yes, Captain. Or he is. It depends on your point of view, doesn't it?
While I don't think this is the message of this episode or anything, I do like the sentiment here, and it's a good clue as to which version of Laz is the bad guy. So, yeah, that's all I got. On the other hand, the Goof. Basically, this whole episode is Goof. There were pretty fundamental reasons for this that we'll get into later, but there's some specifics I'd like to point out first. This episode is not one I revisit very much, and it's been probably decades since I've watched it. Holy balls. I remembered that it was bad, but I didn't remember it was this bad. So what do you start with this? Well, how about we start with this? Was this guy having a beard so important that it didn't matter that the beard looked like hammered dog shit? Some are admittedly better than others, but they're all terrible, and why does he have multiple beards in the first place? Who ordered 6 different beards of varying thickness for this guy? And this one? This is barely a beard at all. Did it come this way? Did someone start trimming and they just couldn't stop? Who looks at this and goes, yep, that's definitely not hilarious. He looks like he fell face first onto the floor of a barber shop.
Wrong?
No. I have a ship's physician with a strange sense of humor.
No, but this is no joke, Jim. I know what I saw.
Bridge calling the captain.
On my way. Lazarus, you're with me. Bones? If I had time, I'd laugh.
This is not the first time that Kirk has thought weirdly that McCoy was joking when it's obvious he isn't. What's up with that? If he was joking, not only would it be hugely unprofessional and indicate that McCoy isn't really a reliable ship's surgeon, but the joke wouldn't be funny or even make sense. Like, I'm sure that McCoy is upset that Kirk isn't taking him seriously when he knows what he saw, but I'd also be kind of insulted that Kirk thought that I thought that, haha, I made you think the crazy guy's head wound disappeared, was funny. Besides, with everything else going on, this is the thing you think is so outlandish it must be a joke? So when Kirk comes back from Anti-Universe and fights Laz, check these two out. What the hell are you two doing over there? You just standing there while this fight is going on? And what's with the dunce-eating grin on this guy? Your performance review is not gonna go well, my friend. Production. So let's talk about why this episode is a steaming pile of hoarder poop, stem to friggin' stern. Reason number one, the script. Writer Don Ingalls was a buddy of Gene's and wrote for a lot of television westerns of the time. Have Gun Will Travel, The Virginian, and a bunch of others you probably never heard of. His initial pitch was for Laz to be a swashbuckler, on the hunt for the monster who destroyed his planet. Charismatic, he woos beautiful, quote, space chemist Charlene Masters, and through the sheer power of persuasion gets the crew of the Enterprise to join him on his Ahab-like hunt for a monster that turns out to be himself. All in all, not a bad premise, and everybody seemed jazzed about it, but Gene Coon, Bob Justman, even Gene Roddenberry himself were confused about how this was all going to be accomplished. What the details of this story were going to end up being. And the more specific the script got, the more confused everybody was. At one point, Kirk was going to meet his alternate universe self, but NBC's Stan Robertson put a stop to that, pointing out that this would make the third time this season that a duplicate Kirk showed up. Good call. Speaking of reused ideas, there was going to be a love story between Lazarus and Masters. Later episode Space Seed was also already in development at this point, and that story also involved a love affair between a crew member and the guest star/villain. Ironically, Gene wanted to nix the Khan relationship in favor of the Lazarus-Masters relationship. But Gene Coon thought the betrayal aspect of Space Seed was more crucial to the story, so he decided to nick the romance in this one. Problem is, once they removed that part of the story, there were a lot of holes that needed to be filled. Unfortunately, they filled a lot of those holes with longer Blue Room sequences and tripling the number of times Laz falls off of stuff. Plus, without the intimate and personal dialogue between Masters and Laz, a lot of the stuff that would have made us sympathize with Laz got cut out, leaving just a kind of crazy guy being crazy. The chaos of this script meant there were rewrites all through the pre-production period and even into shooting, leaving little room for rehearsal or real preparation for the actors. And speaking of that, reason number two, the Barrymore situation. While an early version of the script was the current version of the script, it was sent to John Drew Barrymore, son of John Barrymore, future father of Drew Barrymore. He'd done some big stuff, starring in Never Love a Stranger with Steve McQueen, played Ulysses in the Trojan Wars with Steve Reeves, and appeared in television shows Gunsmoke, Rawhide, and The Wild Wild West. He loved the idea of playing the version of Lazarus that was in the script he was sent, and signed a contract to appear in the episode. Well, when he showed up for his final fitting, which was on the first day of shooting, he was given the new script. Seeing the changes, he told the production heads he wasn't going to do it no more. Said his character changed too much. Completely bailed on it even though he was under contract. Later, Desilu filed a complaint with SAG, and a review board that consisted of the likes of Carl Malden, Charlton Heston, and future Star Trek guest star Ricardo Montalban heard the case. They weren't quick to side with the studio against a fellow actor, but they couldn't deny that Barrymore was fully in the wrong here, and they fined him $1,500 and pulled his card for 6 months, meaning he couldn't work as an actor in that time. But that was later. Right now, with Barrymore on tomorrow's call sheet, the production was in a pickle. Well, Bill Shatner had worked with Robert Brown on an unsold television pilot called Colossus and thought he would be perfect. Gene Roddenberry reached out to him on either November 16th, the day Barrymore pulled out at 11 p.m., according to DC Fontana, or the 17th, the day they shot Lazarus's first scenes, according to Brown. Either way, he came in thinking he's going to talk about the role and get a script to read and see if he wanted the part. Gene told him basically, you already have the part. Get in costume, you need it on set, like right now. Luckily, Barrymore's costume fit him. And you know the mangy tribble? Well, head of makeup Fred Phillips wanted to make the most of this crazy situation, told Brown he was going to give him a, quote, who knows what kind of look. Something that wasn't planned for Barrymore. Into the tribble. Now, why it changes so many times? Well, who can say? The reason it's so thick when he's at Vasquez Rocks is because Phillips didn't go on location, and the makeup crew took the wrong beard with him. But honestly, it's just another symptom of all the chaos of this production. Reason number 3, production chaos. So much other stuff went crazy on the set. The costume department didn't get the memo in time that Masters was now an engineer and not a chemist, so her uniform is still blue. But even so, she's supposed to be a lieutenant and she has slick sleeves, which indicates she's an ensign. Literally nobody noticed the different beards, not even the director. The sign outside the dilithium charging room was supposed to say that instead of engineering, which was confusing since the place didn't look anything like the engineering set we've seen a number of times before. And also, if that's engineering, where the hell is Scotty? Shooting ran long every day, and they only had 2 on-location days at Vasquez Rocks and didn't get to shoot the scene where Kirk is in the alternate universe talking to Alt Laz at his Jetsons ship. So Matt Jeffries, being the all-star badass that he is, set up at short notice a soundstage as close as he could get it for that scene. Kinda works being in an alternate universe, I guess, but it's still pretty obvious it ain't Vasquez Rocks. Also, Gene wanted Kirk to do more heroic stuff, and the best they could come up with was the fight between Kirk and Head Wound Laz, which is why we have Spock and 2 red shirts just standing around watching their captain fighting the guy and just kinda let it happen. And there are countless other things that went totally wrong with this production. I would be here for hours just listing them all. It's like Gene Roddenberry himself went on to stage 9 at Desilu and screamed Macbeth like 100 times or something. I have to say, though, for the pressure he was under, Robert Brown did a pretty good job with what he was given. So definitely credit where credit is due. For an interesting what-if scenario, had Brown not been able to take the role of Lazarus, they were going to have to scrap the episode entirely and start shooting another one. Why, oh why, didn't Ovaltine need a crazy guy spokesman that week? Ruminations. So many people, when you ask them what is the worst episode of Star Trek the original series, will usually say Spock's brain. Honestly, I'm not sure that's in my bottom 5. It's bad, but it's a fun and goofy kind of bad, you know? The alternative factor is an almost angering kind of bad, and I definitely put it below Spock's brains in terms of utter crappiness. As we go, we'll see how many get this designation, but as of right now, in the spirit of the Ig Nobels and the Razzies, the alternative factor gets the first award of the Worse Than Spock's Brain certification. I don't know if that's the worst episode overall. We do still have And the Children Shall Lead on the horizon, but Lord have mercy, it sure ain't good. So, for what it's worth, there you have it, the alternative factor. I gotta hear what you guys thought of this episode. Let me know down in the comments. If you're digging the reviews, reach down there and hit the like button if you would. Really helps the channel out. And thank you from the bottom of my heart to all of our subscribers. And if you're not a subscriber, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on all the excitement of watching stuff with me, Possum Rob. If you're looking to support the channel monetarily, we've got some options for you to do that. Hitting that join button and joining the channel will get you early access to audio commentaries for The Expanse and Babylon 5, as well as anything else I happen to put up. Getting close to being done with something fun and special that I hope you guys dig, and that'll go up for members a couple of weeks ahead of the public release. Also, looking to do a group call with the channel members and maybe some behind the scenes kind of stuff as well, so lots of stuff happening there. If you're more of a one-time kind of person, that's great too. The thanks button will let you put a few quatloos in the tip jar. Maybe I can get a slice at Lombardi's or something. Finally, why not get some amazing swag for your contribution? ADstudiosmerch.com has all of your possum-related gear, from t-shirts to coffee mugs to phone cases. You'll look great, be the envy of your friends and family, and you'll be supporting the channel as you do it. Speaking of friends and family, you know anybody who likes Star Trek and or mouthy possums? Spread the love, share out this video or whichever is your favorite, and let's get some more people on this ship. The more the merrier. Next time, we get our first proper time travel episode. Kirk and crew find that they have to kidnap a 20th century fighter pilot to prevent him from spilling the beans about the Enterprise to his superiors, and find they don't really know what to do with him after that. Join us to see what scheme they come up with next time when we take a look at Tomorrow is Yesterday. Until then, possum friends are awesome friends. Take it easy, all right? Later.